Hello and welcome to this review of my Casio Rakuichi S-1316RKBJ2 keyboard. Quite a mouthful. This was a donation from a viewer, thanks again May. It's been a while since I got it in, as my list of keyboards to cover means I have a pretty long turnover time, but it's a pleasure to finally cover it. Now, my old school followers will be thrilled to see another vintage keyboard on the channel, as am I frankly, but there are probably several things you'll assume wrong about this keyboard based off of its looks, including the fact that it is in fact vintage. Because although it looks like it's from that ancient time where they used weird old connectors, and considering this is obviously a specialty keyboard, you probably expect it to have some sort of crazy old proprietary plug, or at best 80, XT or PS2 or something like that. It's actually USB, and what's more, they still sell this keyboard. Second, even though it looks quite rare and expensive, it's neither of those. It's super common and dirt cheap, or at least I've been told so. I think my benefactor bought it for €16, or for those of you that play hand egg instead of actual football, that's $18.61. So what this thing actually is one of the keyboard models produced for Rakuichi, which is a sort of enterprise resource planning, or ERP, system developed by Casio for things like sales, accounting, management, payrolling, and other operations. It's not just a software package though, it comes with its own hardware, including its own keyboard, which is what this thing is. Now, the original Rakuichi system is from 1992, but I'm not sure this model of keyboard already came with it at that time. You can still buy what appears to be exactly the same keyboard, except in a silver-colored case though. So, as I mentioned, this is a specialist keyboard, which explains why it looks a bit weird compared to other office keyboards. That's also why specialist keyboards are always so interesting to cover. You get to see all sorts of funky shit on them. This one comes with a sort of modified JIS layout on it, with split backspace, right shift and a left shift, several banks of keys at the top here, and a numpad that's obviously modified to be able to do calculator operations with clear and all clear buttons, and a 000 key, although that's not actually particularly rare on Japanese keyboards. Casio calls this bank of macroable buttons at the top left the glowing easy chin button, and supposedly they light up when pressed, though this must be a Rakuichi specific feature as it doesn't work over USB on PC. Instead, this bank outputs mainly F keys and combinations thereof. These are F1 through F8. Here, then this is F9 through F12, then Control F3, Control F4, F5, F6, etc., then Control F12, F1, F10, and F11. So, kind of weird, but I'm sure this corresponds to standard functions in the Rakuichi suite. The other keys up here all output other weird combinations of modifiers with all sorts of other keys. Now, this isn't actually the only model of keyboard you can get for the Rakuichi system. There are a whole bunch of them, but as far as I can tell, the main selling point for modern Rakuichi systems is that it comes with a GUI and writable surface on the interface, which recognizes, and I quote, kana, alphanumeric characters, symbols, external characters, and radical indexes, the latter of which sounds a bit heretical to me, and as a result, filling in all these forms and tables and making annotations, etc. should be very fast and straightforward. However, to accommodate for more old-fashioned users, I quote, a dedicated JIS keyboard is available for those who are accustomed to using a keyboard, allowing for quick business processing, which is a polite way of saying okay boomer, and personally, at least, I appreciate the inclusion of a more straightforward human input device because I'm not an embryo. Of course, being a specialist keyboard, as well as a JIS layout one, it does take some getting used to. Mainly, it's all the extra keys that put keys you actually do want to use further out of reach. For example, all this stuff here means that you need to really reach for this shift key over here, and the same thing goes for the backspace key. Plus, all this gubbins at the bottom here means that you really have a very small space left, and none of this really does anything useful on a normal PC anyway, well, except maybe the tilde key, which is put somewhere here rather than at the top for some reason. And as far as I can tell, there is no Alt key on this keyboard, which can be quite a palaver at times. But perhaps most of all, I found the arrow keys here to be somewhat annoying. Now, putting the arrow keys high up is not unheard of on Japanese keyboards, especially old ones, and it's nice to have arrow keys to begin with, which admittedly is a luxury I'm not always given on keyboards nowadays. But in order to not trigger the keys below it, you need to hold your hand in this sort of T-Rex pose, which is fine when just using it for a little bit, you know, 1 or 2 taps. But if you're playing video games such as Beyond All Reason or several other RTS games where the arrow keys are the camera controls, you have to use them non-stop, and this quickly becomes pretty uncomfortable. The switches don't help the situation that much either. They're Fujitsu Domeworth slider, which are a very mediocre switch. Not the worst rubber domes for sure, they're actually not that scratchy and feel kinda soft to use, but that's more due to overwhelming mushiness than anything else. It's quite unpleasant compared to the amazing switches I've been spoiling myself with for the last few years. It's a rather gentle typing feel, but it doesn't feel refined or even defined, if that makes sense. It's just some sort of event happening when you press a key. That's basically the most specific I can be about this. So that's not really what you should be getting the keyboard for. Is it better than standard office slop? Maybe a bit, though that heavily depends. Office keyboards nowadays vary a lot. Despite being a rubber dome model, and a cheap one at that, it's still almost 1.3 kilos, or 3.102 hand eggs in imperial units. Not bad for what's essentially just a big piece of plastic. Of course, it flexes a fair bit, making this weird clacking sound in the process. Or maybe it's a crack rather than a clack. That said, there are a bunch of cool features on this thing as well. Like I said, this bank here isn't just illuminated, but also relegible, and it's got 2 integrated LEDs in the keys, which is exceptionally rare for membrane keyboards. Plus, it's got a good old cable gutter, which is a rare feature on keyboards nowadays, even though it's more important than ever with so many models having detachable cables. The actual cable for this model itself is quite short though, maybe because the port for it was located on or near the front of the computer or something. It also uses Fujitsu's old and extremely distinctive tombstone keycaps. These have been in use for decades, all the way back to their old leaf spring switches, which were excellent, and which makes the discovery of these rubber dome switches all the more disappointing. However, most of them, specifically the ones where the print is not too fine, so most of the alpha caps in the numpad, are beautiful double shots with super sharp and consistent printing, and they're 3mm thick, which is twice as thick as GMK's venerable double shots. So these caps are really nice, definitely the most high quality aspect of the whole keyboard. Of course, there is also the matter of it just looking straight up cool. It's not a very high quality product, I think, but very much an awesome looking one, with the Japanese characters on them, including front prints, the colored keycaps, relegibles, loads of buttons. There's 126 of them, by the way, more than a battleship. The weird layout, etc. It's got that style, you know. By the way, what this fucked up O is, or why it looks like an inverted Q, I have no idea. If you have any clue as to why they did this, let me know in the comments. So, would I use this as a daily driver? Nah, of course not. The layout is too annoying and the switches are mega meh. But it's a great addition to my collection, so I'm very happy with it. So, thanks again, mate. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.